Most people watching this right now will still be working at 65. Not because they have to, because they never stop to ask one question. Here it is. What if the math everyone gave you was wrong from the beginning? You weren't told to retire early. You were told to wait. Wait for 65. Wait for Social Security. Wait for the pension that probably doesn't exist anymore. And somewhere between your first real paycheck and right now, you stopped questioning whether the waiting made sense. I stopped working at 40. Not because I inherited money. Not because I launched a startup that got acquired. I made one decision at 32, a single, specific decision that most people overlook because it looks boring from the outside. It isn't boring. It's the most disruptive thing I ever did with a spreadsheet and a Saturday afternoon. Before I tell you what that decision was, I need you to answer something. Right now, in your head, if someone handed you a number, one number, that represented exactly how much money you needed to never work again, would you know what to do with it? Would you even know what that number is? Hold that question, because by the end of this video, you will. And what you do with the answer is going to bother you in the best possible way. Stay here, because the part most people skip past, the part that sounds like a technicality, is the exact part that changes everything. Picture a Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. You're at a desk, or a job site, or a break room with fluorescent lights that flicker every 20 minutes. You're not miserable. That's the thing nobody talks about. You're fine. The job pays. The benefits are okay. You've got a 401k that someone else set up and you've never fully understood. Life is stable, and stable feels like enough until the moment it doesn't, and that moment always arrives without warning. That's where I was at 29. Not desperate, not inspired, just aware of a low-level hum underneath everything, this barely audible frequency that said, "Is this it?" I wasn't looking for a way out. I was looking for a reason to believe the math could work out differently than I'd been told. Here's what I'd been told. Save 10 to 15% of your income, put it in a 401k, and by 65, you should have enough. That's the script. That's the plan 78% of American workers are following right now, according to a 2023 Federal Reserve survey. And here is what nobody tells you about that plan. It was designed in 1974. It was designed for a different economy, a different life expectancy, and a different definition of enough. In 1974, the average American worked for one company for 22 years. Today, that number is 4.1 years. The world restructured itself entirely. The retirement math never got updated. So you're running a 1974 algorithm in a 2024 reality, and wondering why the numbers feel off. They feel off because they are off, and the gap between the plan you inherited and the life you actually want to live, that gap has a name, a formula, and a fix. But the fix requires you to understand one thing first. The system was never built to free you. It was built to keep you functional until someone else decided you were done. Which means the only way out is a decision the system never taught you to make. And that decision starts with a number most people have never calculated for themselves. The number is called your FI number, Financial Independence Number. And it isn't complicated, but the way you arrive at it will crack something open in your thinking that you won't be able to close again. Here is how it works. You take your annual living expenses, not your income, your actual expenses, and you multiply them by 25. That's it. If you spend $60,000 a year to live the life you want to live, your FI number is $1 on $5 million. If you spend $48,000, it's $1.02 million. If you spend $72,000, it's $1.80 million. Write it down. Right now, pause the video if you need to, because this number is going to live in your head differently than any other number ever has. That multiplier, 25, comes from something called the Trinity Study, published in 1998 by 3 finance professors at Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. They analyzed 30 years of market data and found that if you withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually, and your portfolio is invested in a diversified mix of stocks and bonds, your money survives. A 30-year retirement with a 96% success rate. 96%. Across every major market crash in that dataset, including 1987, including the early 1970s stagflation. The math is not motivational content. It's peer-reviewed math. But here's where it cracks open. Most people, when they hear one total fund $5 million, hear impossible. They hear some other person's life. They feel the number the way you feel a skyscraper, present, enormous, and completely unrelated to where you're standing. That reaction is the trap. Because the question isn't whether $1 and $5 million is possible. The question is, how far away are you, and what's the most direct route from here to there? And when you run the actual math, not the guessed math, not the hoped math, the compounded returns over time math, the answer surprises almost everyone. Because time and rate of return are doing work you can't see unless you force yourself to look. And the moment you look, the Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. starts feeling optional rather than permanent. But knowing the number isn't the decision I made at 32. The decision came after I realized that reaching the number wasn't the hard part. The hard part was something quieter, something most financial content never touches, and it's the reason two people with identical incomes can have completely different outcomes 15 years later. The gap between the person who reaches FI at 40 and the person who reaches it at 65 almost never comes down to income. It comes down to savings rate. Not how much you earn, how much of what you earn you keep and deploy. This is the thing that breaks people's brains when they first encounter it, because everything in our culture points toward income as the variable that matters. More money, more freedom. That's the story. The story is incomplete. Here's the actual data. A person earning $80,000 a year and saving 10% will reach FI in approximately 43 years. Assuming a 7% real annual return, that's the historical average for a diversified US stock portfolio after inflation. 43 years. They start at 25, they arrive at 68. That's the default path. That's the waiting room. Now watch what happens when you change only one variable. Same $80,000 income. Same 7% return. Raise the savings rate to 40%. FI arrives in 22 years. They start at 25, they arrive at 47. Same person. Same market. 18 fewer years of mandatory work, gone, from one change to one number. Push that savings rate to 50%. 17 years. Start at 28, stop at 45. At 60%, 12 and a half years. The math becomes almost violent in its clarity. The variable that your employer, your bank, your mortgage lender, and every lifestyle advertisement is quietly working against. That's the variable. Savings rate, the gap between what comes in and what goes out before you can choose to deploy it. I calculated my own savings rate for the first time on a Sunday in March 2019. I was 32. I had a $94,000 salary, a $1,100 mortgage, a car payment I didn't need, and a savings rate of 14%. I was on track to work until I was 63. The number sat on my laptop screen in a Google Sheet, with the cursor blinking next to it, and something shifted, not dramatically, not cinematically, quietly, the way a room changes temperature when someone opens a window 3 floors up. My FI number, at my spending level, was $1.4 million. I had $87,000 saved. The distance between where I was and where I needed to be felt enormous, but the distance between my savings rate and the savings rate that would change my trajectory, that distance was the size of 3 decisions, not 30. 3, and 2 of them cost me almost nothing except the story I'd been telling myself about what I deserved to spend money on right now. You now know the formula. You know the multiplier. You know that savings rate beats income as the primary variable. But there's something ahead in this video that most financial content never shows you. The specific friction point where people who understand all of this still fail to act. It's not discipline. It's not willpower. It's not motivation. It's a cognitive trap with a name, documented in behavioral economics research at the University of Chicago, and it explains why people who fully understand the math still choose comfort over compound interest, month after month, until the years pile up and the window closes. If that trap already has you, and statistically, it does, the next 4 minutes are going to feel uncomfortably specific. Because the way out of the trap isn't a new app or a better budget. It's one reframe, one shift in how you define a single word you use every day. You already know that word. You just don't know yet that you've been using it wrong. Don't leave yet. The reframe is worth staying for. The word is afford. You've been using it backward. When most people say I can't afford to save more, they mean saving more would require me to spend less, and spending less feels like loss. That's the framing. That's the trap. Loss aversion, one of the most well-documented findings in behavioral economics, first published by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in 1979, tells us that the pain of losing something weighs roughly twice as heavily as the pleasure of gaining something equivalent. Your brain treats a cut to your current spending as a loss, even when that cut is financing your own freedom. The reframe is this: every dollar you don't deploy toward your FI number isn't a dollar you spent. It's a day of your life you sold at a discount. At a 7% real return, $1 invested at 32 becomes $7.61 by the time you're 62. When you spend that dollar on something you won't remember in 3 months, you aren't just spending a dollar. You're spending $7.61 of future freedom. That's what afford actually means. You can't afford not to save. I put a sticky note on my laptop in April 2019 with 3 numbers. $1 for IM 3030, $7, $8 in dollars more 30, in Toria 3030 3030, when for in 30 30 30 30 30 30, 330 30 30 30. Not in 30 of relive uvens 30 30 30 30 30 30 30, with 305. I sold the car I owned on a loan and bought a 2014 Honda Civic for $9,200 in cash. I cancelled a $340 a month gym membership I used 8 times a year and ran outside. I stopped the $210 monthly subscription box habit, plural. I had 3 of them. Products arriving in boxes I opened with mild interest and stored in closets that already held too much. Those 3 changes moved my savings rate from 14% to 31% without touching my rent, my food, my social life, or anything that produced real, lasting satisfaction. 31% cut my projected working years from 31 to 19, from 63 to 51. In one afternoon with a spreadsheet and a sticky note. But the decision that moved it past 40%, the one that took it from early retirement to actually stopping at 40, that one required something different. Not cutting, building. A second income stream that didn't trade hours for dollars. And the specific vehicle I used to build it isn't what most people expect when they hear passive income. There's no course, no dropshipping, no crypto. What I built required one skill I already had and one platform that paid me for specificity rather than volume. The gap between 31% and 47%, the savings rate I eventually hit, came from $2,200 a month in rental income from a single property I purchased in Columbus, Ohio in 2021 for $187,000 with an FHA loan at 3.1%. I house hacked it. Lived in 1 unit, rented the other 2. My housing cost dropped from $1,100 per month to $0, then to negative $340 a month. The tenants paid my mortgage and put money back. That one decision added 16 percentage points to my savings rate. 16 points from a single afternoon at a title company in Columbus. By January 2024, the portfolio balance crossed $1.4 million for the first time. I remember looking at the number on a phone screen at 6:43 in the morning, standing in a kitchen that smelled like coffee and old wood, the kind of quiet that only exists before the day starts asking things of you. 8 years of specific, deliberate decisions. 1. FI number, on a sticky note. One spreadsheet I built in March 2019 and updated every single month for 58 months without missing once. I submitted my resignation on a Thursday. Not dramatically. I wrote a professional email, gave 4 weeks' notice, trained my replacement thoroughly, and left cleanly. No speech, no moment. The drama everyone imagines attached to this decision simply wasn't there, because by the time I walked out, I'd already been free for months in every way that mattered. The resignation was paperwork. Freedom was a process, not a date. What I want you to understand is that none of this required genius. It required 3 things: the FI number, the savings rate math, and the willingness to see each dollar as future time rather than current permission. Those 3 things applied consistently over 8 years, from a $94,000 salary that never crossed $118,000. Not a tech salary, not a Wall Street salary, a Midwestern salary from a job that was fine, and that I left the moment it became optional. The question you need to sit with now is, what is your FI number? Not a rough guess. The real number, your actual annual spending multiplied by 25. Pull up your bank statements from the last 6 months. Average the monthly spend. Multiply by 12. Multiply by 25. Write it somewhere, you'll see it every day. Not as a fantasy, as a target. Targets behave differently than dreams. They generate decisions, because the alternative isn't neutral. The alternative is the Tuesday at 2:47 p.m., the fluorescent flicker, the fine but not free life, compounding in the other direction year after year. You're watching this video, which means you haven't crossed it yet. That window is still open. Calculate your FI number. Calculate your current savings rate. Identify the 3 highest expenses that produce the least lasting satisfaction. Those 3 things, done this week, are the beginning of the exact process I started on a Sunday in March 2019. You don't need to do this perfectly. You need to do it directionally. A savings rate that moves from 10% to 25% changes your life. Every percentage point you move that number closes a month off your required working life. If this math changed something in how you're thinking right now, subscribe, because the next video covers the exact strategy I used to find and evaluate the Columbus property in 11 days, including the one number I looked for in every listing that told me whether the rent would actually cover the mortgage. That number saves you from the most common and expensive mistake first-time house hackers make. It's specific, it's testable, and it's in the next video. The Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. is optional. You just needed the math to prove it. Now you have it.